The committee will come to order without objection. The chair is authorized to declare recess of the committee at any time. Before we get started, we were a little pressed for time at the last occasion. I would again like to welcome Congressman Luke Messer of Indiana again to our committee. And go ahead, yes, sir, deserving of a second round of applause. And assign him to his new subcommittees pursuant to the committee's organizing resolution of January 23rd, 2013. I hereby assign Mr. Messer to fill the vacancies on the subcommittee on capital markets and government-sponsored enterprises and the subcommittee on monetary policy and trade. I also assign our chairman emeritus, Mr. Bacchus, to serve as a voting member of the subcommittee on oversight and investigations. I wish to announce to all members we have, if you counted them, 14 bills to mark up today. We may not necessarily get to all the bills today, in which case I would anticipate a continuation of the markup next week. At that time, the markup may include TRIA as well. Regardless, I would anticipate marking that up clearly before the July 4th recess and perhaps as soon as next week. Regardless, at 10 a.m. in the morning, tomorrow morning rather, we anticipate having votes, rolled votes tomorrow at 10 a.m. in the committee room. And before proceeding with today's legislative business, I wish to recognize the ranking member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to just take a moment to thank all of the members of this committee who have sent flowers and condolences to me because of the death of my mother. I would like especially to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your thoughtfulness, your kindness, and your consideration in rescheduling. Your words of condolence and sympathy certainly have been very helpful to me, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you all.
Certainly it was the least of a courtesy that could be extended, and although there is literally an aisle that divides two camps, we are still one family in this Congress and in this committee, and as you well know, our hearts have gone out to you. I'm sure every member has kept you in their prayers, and we wish again for that your family would find some peace, and we welcome you back. We will now proceed to today's legislative business. Without objection, the chair will recognize himself and then the ranking member for 5 minutes for purposes of making an opening statement. 12.2%, that is the rate of underemployment or real unemployment in today's economy. The latest figures show that there were roughly 10 million unemployed Americans looking for work last month. 20 million, almost 20 million Americans today are underemployed. According to the Department of Labor, in May, the labor force participation rate fell to 62.8%, the lowest level in at least a generation. It hasn't been lower since March of 1978. According to the Census Bureau, 15% of Americans are living in poverty. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the economy actually shrank by 1% in the first quarter of this calendar year. According to a study done by the Brookings Institution, the American economy is less entrepreneurial now than at any point in the last 3 decades. I say this to remind all members of this committee that, again, millions, in this case tens of millions of our fellow countrymen continue to suffer in a continuing non-recovery recovery. It is their interest, their sustainability, their hopes, their desires, their needs that should be paramount on our minds as we enter the markup of the legislation before us. We should continue to focus not just on the statistics, but on the voices. The voices I know that I hear from my district. I hear from David of Mesquite, who says, I've sent out over 1,500 resumes and have gotten 4 interviews, with none advancing to more than the first. I hear from James in Winsboro, says, last month my husband only worked 6 hours. We are selling things to make ends meet. I hear from Bobby in Mineola, who writes me, part-time underpaid work with cost of living so high is destroying families that I know in Texas. These are the statistics. These are the voices. Again, we have, I believe, 14 bills before us that all have a common thread. Ultimately, they are there to help the people who are underemployed and unemployed in America today. What we will do is offer bills that will add more transparency and more accountability to both the Financial Stability Oversight Council and the CFPB. And I would just remind my colleagues, particularly those on the other side of the aisle, regardless of how noble a purpose an agency may have, it does not mean it is not in need of accountability and transparency. I believe there is no agency in government that has a more noble purpose than the Veterans Administration, and clearly there is no agency of government that is probably in greater need of accountability and transparency. Small businesses are the job engine of America. We all know that. The evidence is indisputable. And small businesses need capital, and small businesses suffer under the weight of the red tape regulatory load. And again, let's err on the side of helping those who want to go to work in America. So I want to thank my colleagues who are bringing these various bills to the markup today. Again, we have heard from many that CFPB is a unique agency. And regrettably, they are part of a challenge where America's small businesses are suffering a death of 1,000 paper cuts. The bills that are presented for the CFP, almost all are practices that are routine for almost every other federal agency. In addition, we have a couple of bills coming out of Mr. Garrett's subcommittee that will make it easier for small businesses to access the capital they need to become successful and create jobs. Again, it will be a long markup, but I assume a productive markup, and I can assure you the voices of David from Mesquite and Bobby from Mineola will be heavy on my mind as we enter this markup. I hope that each member thinks about the voices of those who are underemployed and unemployed in their districts. At this time, I yield to the ranking member 5 minutes.